Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining our webinar today. We're excited to have Alex Knoll, our Director of Healthcare Business Development, leading today's session. We'll give it about a minute for attendees to join, and then we'll get started.
All right, looks like it is 11:01 Central Time. So I see some participants in the Zoom. So let's go ahead and we can go and get started. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining me today. I'm excited to welcome you to our NAB CE credited session, The Future of Healthcare Hiring. As we approach 2025, which is crazy because it's a few weeks away, today's session, Preparing for 2025, Proven Strategies to Transform Your Healthcare Hiring, will provide actionable insights to help you build a strong foundation for success in the new year. We hope you'll leave inspired, informed, and ready to take your hiring strategies to the next level in 2025 and beyond. Just a quick note before I dive in, if you have any questions during the presentation, feel free to submit them into the Q&A feature through Zoom, and we will address those at the end of the webinar. Before I dive in, I'd like to briefly introduce myself. My name is Alex Knoll. I'm the Director of Healthcare Business Development here at Hirology. I've spent several years working in the healthcare sector with specific focus on recruitment initiatives in long-term care. Over the years, I've gained a deep knowledge of the applicant landscape, their preferences, and decision-making processes. Today, I'm excited to talk about a topic that I'm personally passionate about: hiring the right team to care for our loved ones in the long-term care space. Whether you're a vendor, an administrator, you work in HR, your role is crucial to enhancing the lives of seniors. It's a demanding profession that often doesn't receive the recognition that it truly deserves. So I want to thank you for the time and dedication you bring to this important work. In the next 30 to 40 minutes, I'll provide insights to help you better understand the applicant landscape and offer tangible ways to streamline your hiring processes. The goal is to equip you with the tools to make informed decisions and improve your recruitment strategy for faster and more efficient hires. In order to do so, I'll be addressing the following questions throughout the webinar. Are you facing the same challenges as your peers when it comes to hiring and retention? Where are your peers sourcing top candidates for hard-to-fill roles like CNAs? And what do top job seekers want from employers, and what are your competitors currently offering? And finally, what opportunities do you have to stand out and capture your fair share of today's healthcare industry job seekers? Before I dive in, I want to note that the data throughout this presentation comes from original surveys that we conduct here at Hirology. We did 2 surveys in the healthcare space at the end of last year. The first is a survey of healthcare facility HR teams to get an understanding of their challenges and what they're currently doing to overcome them. But then we also surveyed applicants in the healthcare industry in order to get a more holistic understanding of really what's happening with today's market, where we asked about their expectations for job interview and communication speed, job benefits, and their typical job search process. The survey questions we had for HR professionals touched on the following themes: 2024 hiring challenges, average hiring speed, top channels for applicants and hires, and hiring process bottlenecks. Now, let's go ahead and dive into the results. The first thing I want to highlight focuses on challenges around recruitment and healthcare hiring. We'll go through what facilities are struggling with as it relates to hiring and retention, as well as our advice for overcoming those challenges. Overall, despite a cooling job market in many sectors, our employer survey found that healthcare industry, by and large, is still finding the hiring climate to be incredibly challenging. 94% said that hiring at their facility is still somewhat or extremely challenging, while 90% say that retention is still a challenge. 44% said that they feel that hiring is even more challenging than it was a year ago. And about half have more open roles this year than they did the year previously. While 26% said that the number of open roles has stayed about the same. Now, when you think of the state of the healthcare employment over the last few years, this makes sense. The pandemic triggered extreme burnout amongst many of these professionals who had opportunities outside of healthcare. And on top of that, younger workers entering the workforce are less likely to choose CNA or RN positions. Month after month, the BLS releases data about job creation, and healthcare always finds its way into the top three. We're seeing more jobs and less workers, which is only perpetuating high competition. So, where do the greatest challenges lie when it comes to hiring at healthcare facilities? In our survey, most reported that CNA is the most difficult role to fill today. And again, we're seeing a higher demand for these roles and a declining interest among young workers and high levels of burnout. And the results all seem to make sense, right? There are just fewer people out there with the skills or necessarily the interest in gaining those skills to meet the demand. And demand for these types of roles is always going to remain steady. People are always going to need healthcare, and even more so in the next decade, given the high aging population in the country right now. Not only are CNAs difficult to hire, but they're even more difficult to retain, with almost 70% of respondents reporting that this role drives the highest turnover within their facilities. And unfortunately, I think the majority of this turnover can be attributed to burnout, which I was mentioning in the last slide. Difficult and demanding work combined with lower pay and inflexible benefits tends to exacerbate this. Now, as we get further into the presentation, I'll touch on what facilities and communities can do to provide the benefits healthcare job seekers are looking for. When we ask respondents to dig deeper into why they find hiring so challenging, no-shows and ghosting top that list, meaning they're able to get candidates in the door, but they find that these applicants often drop out without warning at some point during that hiring process. Now, this is an important trend to highlight because we found that applicant volume topped the list in years past. But what we're seeing now is a speed and process issue. Job seekers typically ghost employers when they find other opportunities or the process is too long and too complicated. This shift might be due to ongoing inflation leading to more people re-entering the workforce, but they still have the upper hand and plenty of options to work. So they can afford to ghost employers if they don't hear back fast enough or if the hiring process doesn't fit their schedules or their needs. For example, when the application process isn't mobile friendly, which is a huge miss because we're seeing 70% of today's job applicants are originating on a mobile device. Now, I want to go ahead and reiterate that stat again because because that stat is absolutely staggering, right? 70% of applications we're seeing right now are originating on a mobile device, which means if your application isn't mobile friendly, you've likely lost them. Now, I challenge you all to go on your mobile phones after this webinar and try to apply for one of your open positions. If you can't apply on your phone, or it's taking longer than a few minutes, or it's requiring some upfront information like collecting documents, I urge you to start those conversations internally and how to change that process. Now, you're probably thinking to yourselves that the state of the healthcare hiring market feels a bit bleak. And if you're struggling, just know that you're not alone. And this is exactly why you're all here today. I'm here to hopefully provide some new ideas to tweak your current process to update your job design, channel strategy, and applicant engagement. And that's what I'll dig into for the remainder of this presentation. First and foremost, I want to touch on what we're seeing from facilities and communities when it comes to benefits offered and overall job design. What are your competitors doing, and what do job seekers want? Understanding the answers to these two questions can help you design jobs that capture the attention of top talent and get ahead of your competitors. Now, by and large, facilities are offering their fair range of benefits across the board, with workplace culture, education reimbursement, and schedule flexibility topping the list. And when we ask job seekers what benefits they value the most outside of pay, those same benefits ring true. Which means if your facility is not offering a top-notch workplace culture, education reimbursement, and especially schedule flexibility, which is such a critical benefit in this industry known for burnout, you're most likely losing top talent because because they're choosing to apply to your competitors due to the benefits that they're currently offering. And when we asked healthcare job seekers what would motivate them to take a lower paying role if they received two offers, a few interesting things stood out. So first, only 9% to nothing said nothing. That means that only 9% of job seekers are motivated only by pay, and that 91% of job seekers will take lower paying roles if there are other benefits on the table that meet their needs. Top benefits that job seekers prioritize over pay include, you guessed it, schedule flexibility, career growth, and workplace culture. Based on what we know from the previous slide, most facilities and communities say that they are offering flexibility, training opportunities, and feel that they have a great company culture. But only about a third of them said that they offer real job growth opportunities. In other words, if you're not offering these things, then you're behind. And if you are offering those things today, you need to find ways to market those perks, which brings me to my next slide. To talk about some job descriptions. Why do they matter? And how can they help you differentiate your competitive advantage over the competition? For two main reasons. Applicant volume is the first. A great job description will capture the attention of more job seekers who are sifting through hundreds of options for work and are looking to quickly identify openings that meet their needs and match their current skill set. But then there's applicant quality. The right job description will also help you attract people with the right skills and experience to apply to their jobs, ultimately helping you increase your candidate to hire ratio. Typically, we recommend a structured formula. Don't start with responsibilities and duties. Rather, I want you to start with a quick, short summary of what makes your facility or your community unique. Then a short summary of the job for SEO purposes. This is a 1 to 2 sentence, bare bones overview of what the job is using relevant keywords. You need to stand out by describing why your company is unique and what the job actually is. But then I want you to dive right into the benefits or what's in it for the applicant. This is the most important part of your description, and it needs to come ahead of all the responsibilities and all the requirements. Because again, people have high expectations for what they want, and they have plenty of options for work. But you're going to lose qualified applicants if you aren't shouting this from the rooftops. People want to know first and foremost that what you're offering is what they're looking for before they want to learn about what the role actually entails. So this is where you might highlight everything that's most important to your applicant. Schedule flexibility, culture, benefits, career growth, you name it. Then you can dig into responsibilities and requirements at the end. And then finally, always include an equal opportunity employer statement. Now, once you've done this, I want you all to take a step back and read through your job description and ask yourself, would you be excited to work here and have this job? Use the description to help drive excitement as a way to promote your employment branding. My final recommendation here also is to make sure that your benefit information is highlighted in big, bold letters on your company careers page. The next opportunity I wanted to discuss is reaching candidates on the channels that they're currently using. Much like with job design, it's important to understand what your competitors are using to source talent and then what job seekers are using. And most importantly, I want you to look for those gaps. So what channels are your competitors using? According to our survey, by and large, the healthcare industry is covering their bases, using a range of channels with social media, referrals, and job boards topping those lists. And when it comes to the survey respondents to select their top performing sourcing channels for applicant volume, job board is number one. Now this makes sense. Job boards are an incredibly popular and common channel for job seekers. And if you're paying to sponsor your jobs, you're going to see a high volume of applicants. And while volume is important because it gives you options, it's also important to make sure you're receiving quality applicants, which brings me to my next slide. When it comes to finding quality applicants, we actually found that referral programs are almost tied with paid top job boards. What this tells us is that job boards aren't going away, and they can be a great source of applicant quality when you have the budgets to support them. But referrals can also be really effective and an inexpensive way to source great talent. We see referred applicants hired at 7 times the rate of all other applicants, and then study after study shows that referred candidates not only tend to get hired faster, because your team's essentially vetted them, but they perform better because they're likely similar to the high-performing employee who referred them. And all of this is free to do aside from the cost of your referral bonus, which is typically cheaper than the cost of advertising on the major job boards. Or if you don't have the budgets for this in your community or your facility, test out other options that might resonate with your employees. Things like extra PTO days, a free meal stipend, or something as small as just publicly recognizing employees in company meetings, newsletters, or maybe other social media. This goes a long way. But despite referral programs being a top driver of quality applicants, most facilities aren't getting the most out of them. By and large, facilities are relying on spreadsheets to track referral candidates and word of mouth to promote their employee referral program. And only about a quarter utilize the texting to promote this program. Overall, we're seeing that 40% said that they wish more employees would participate. Now, why is this an issue? Because you could be turning your best employees into your best recruiters if you promoted this on a constant basis and armed them with the tools to do it easily. If you think about the healthcare worker and their day-to-day role, they're not necessarily incentivized to participate in this type of program. So if you're rarely communicating the program and advertising the bonus payout that you're offering, people aren't really going to participate. You need to think about it like a marketing campaign for your facility or your community. You want to reach your team in the channels that they're using, which these days is a cell phone. Remember, 70% of applicants are originating on that mobile device. You want to make sure that you're hitting them with the right message to drive participation. I wanted to expand on the concept of referrals a bit more by touching on some additional job seeker data that we have. We found that overwhelmingly, healthcare job seekers are open to returning to organizations that they previously worked for and places they've applied to in the past but weren't necessarily hired at that time. The same goes for former employees when it comes to referring candidates to old employers. Now, what this tells us is that the concept of referrals can be applied a little bit more broadly. You should be connecting with people through all kinds of relationships and engaging with them, even if you don't have immediate roles to hire. Stay in touch with former employees and candidates that you liked. Send them texts or emails once in a while with updates, making sure that this is top of mind. And don't limit yourself to existing employees when it comes to seeking referrals. Connect with former employees asking for referrals. If a former employee is happy with the time that they spent with you, the data shows that they'd be willing to refer their friends. So to summarize our talent sourcing section, what opportunities do we have? First up, we have employee referrals. This isn't just about getting names. It's about tapping into your team's network to uncover top-notch talent. By optimizing your referral programs, you could unlock a pipeline of skilled candidates who come pre-vetted by your own employees. Next, I want you to cast a wide net. The days of relying solely on one channel are gone. To reach the best candidates, you need to be where they are. This means leveraging various channels, social media, job boards, career sites, to ensure that your posting reaches a diverse audience. And finally, broadening that network out a little bit. Do not limit yourself just to your current employees. Expand your referral networks to include former staff and past applicants. By doing so, you tap into a rich pool of potential talent that might otherwise go untapped. So in summary, by optimizing your referral programs, casting a wide net across various channels, and broadening your network, you can enhance your hiring efforts and secure the best candidates for your facility or your community. The next topic I want to touch on is keeping your top talent engaged throughout the hiring process so that they're not ghosting you. The top two ways of doing this is to stay high touch with your applicants and keep the process engaging. Let's go ahead and take a look. First and foremost, I want to start with the importance of speed. How fast do you have to move exactly? In our survey of healthcare facilities, we found that 86% say they responded to new applicants within 2 days, and that 76% fill roles in 2 weeks or less. Meaning if you're taking longer than 2 days to respond to an applicant, you've most likely lost them. And we actually just came out with a new study and got a little bit more data here, and we're finding that every time a candidate applies for a job, they're actually applying to 16 other jobs along with the one that they applied to yours. So it's good to know that you need to be extremely fast in moving them through the application process. You know the drill though. Let's compare this with the candidate expectations. When we ask healthcare job seekers why they ghost or no show to interviews, the top three answers all have to do with speed and communication from the employer. They'll ghost if you don't move fast enough to their initial application or throughout the hiring process, and if you lead them dark communication-wise. So based on these two slides, we know that job seekers will drop off the process if you can't move fast enough and your competitors can, meaning you need to be moving faster than your competition to keep yourself in this race. Adding more fuel to the fire, even if job seekers are engaged and interested in your organization, your team, more than half will always take the first offer they receive. So even taking an extra day or even just a few hours to move candidates along can be detrimental to your ability in hiring quality talent. All right, so what can you do? First and foremost, I want you to focus on a process overhaul. Define a clear and concise process for your candidate journey and educate your team. Define how long an applicant should wait before they receive a response. Hopefully from the data, you're understanding that this should be within minutes of applying. Have a gold standard of how long it should take to hire for specific positions, and then make sure that standard is known so that you can hold your teams accountable. The next I want to mention is metrics and analytics. It's crucial to track your process and understand not only what's slowing you down, but also where you're currently crushing it. Look at the data you have to diagnose bottlenecks and inefficiencies in the application process, or within specific facilities or communities. Look at the sources that are bringing you the most qualified applicants and allocate time and resources accordingly. See where you can leverage automation and technology throughout the process to give back time to your hiring managers. Which brings me to my final point, and that's to embrace technology. Look for hiring tools that centralize your process and automate those manual steps, allowing you to embrace and increase your hiring speed without requiring more headcount for your recruiting or your HR teams. For example, you can speed up the hiring process and reduce ghosting at the same time by leveraging automatic candidate communications. This saves your team time by removing that manual emailing or texting and allows the candidate to get that frequent communication that they're expecting throughout the hiring process. Speaking of tracking metrics, I wanted to take a minute to touch base on this a little bit deeper because, as we all know, what gets measured gets managed. When we look at the survey results, we found that for the most part, healthcare hiring teams are really not tracking any of the metrics to help them understand and optimize their process, which presents a real opportunity for for those of you that do. Figure out what's working and what isn't in terms of applicant sourcing, internal processes, etc., and be intentional about making adjustments accordingly and put more eggs in the appropriate baskets versus continuously doing the same thing month after month and seeing no results. From a consultative standpoint, we typically tell our customers to track these metrics when they use the Hireology platform, and we make it super easy to do. Everything from applicant volume per source to process adherence across your team and locations. And if you don't have this data at your fingertips, try to hit the easy things first to get ahead of your competition. Use your best employers as your best recruiters, as I was mentioning earlier. Communicate early and often with your applicants and see if your job board representatives can provide some insights as to what is working and what isn't with your account. Finally, the last thing I wanted to touch on is AI and automation and how these types of technologies can improve your speed and candidate engagement. According to our survey of healthcare facility HR teams, only about 7% of facilities are using AI in any capacity in the recruitment process, which makes sense as the idea of using AI in recruitment is still fairly new. And it takes time for organizations, especially large ones, to adopt to new tools and to new technologies. What we're seeing, though, is 55% say that they feel somewhat or very comfortable with the idea of using it, which tells us that the concept of AI is becoming a little bit more mainstream, which is great. However, when we asked where they see AI playing a role in the hiring process, most said that they weren't really sure, with about 20% reporting that they feel that AI can help with identifying top candidates. This all means that healthcare HR teams are curious about AI, and open to the concept of using it to make applying to their jobs easier, but most don't really understand where it can help in a more practical sense. And finally, it's tough to bring up AI in recruitment without addressing the very valid concerns of bias. When asked, almost half said they do feel concerned about biases that might potentially arise within AI in the recruitment process. Now, recruiting in HR is a highly personal yet complex field where the right answers and the right decisions are almost never clear cut. It's natural to have some concerns and reservations about adding AI into this mix. While AI has the potential to complete tasks in human-like behavior, it will always lack the intuition and that nuanced perspective that humans bring to the table. AI tools only know the historical information that you've provided them, but humans can contextualize a person's potential far beyond just data points. Without the human touch, you can't guarantee that the best decision will be made for the unique needs of your team. Many times, the best candidate isn't always the one with the best resume. So what's our advice for healthcare facilities and communities who are curious about AI, but aren't quite sure where to start and are held back by some bias concerns? First, experiment with public AI resources. The data shows that healthcare facilities are cautious yet curious about AI. The good news is that you can experiment with it without making massive investments by leveraging resources like ChatGPT. You can use these types of tools to draft candidate emails that you can revise and then reuse as templates throughout your hiring process. Or you can experiment with prompting it to write job descriptions for you and then save those as templates. Whatever you choose, the key is just getting yourself familiar and comfortable with the tech. The next is investing in forward-thinking HR technology. Many applicant tracking systems and recruitment softwares out there are beginning to integrate AI into their platforms. Look for the solutions that offer things like automated communication, AI-based interview scheduling, and more. The software providers that are already offering AI in these ways will be leaders in AI as it becomes more commonplace down the line. Get your data in order. AI has the potential to revolutionize hiring for the better. But for AI to be effective, it needs to be trained on complete and accurate data. That means that every applicant and candidate in your talent database must have a completed profile. And every rejection, every interview, or hire is logged in that system with as much information as possible. With a clean database, you'll be able to leverage time-saving tools like candidate recommendation engines, job description writers, and more somewhere down the line. And finally, use AI for efficiency, not necessarily the decision-making. AI-driven hiring processes depend on the quality of data used to train the algorithms. Biases present in historical data could be made worse by AI, leading to unintentional discriminatory outcomes. To ensure fairness and transparency, a level of human involvement is always going to be essential. While you can conduct data audits and work to improve the algorithm, we would never advise to leave final decisions around hiring to AI entirely. Simply put, AI should be used to empower your team to work smarter and streamline your current process, not automate the decision-making. Short, sweet, and to the point, but that's all I have for you today. If you like what you saw and you would like to dig a little bit further into that research that I was referencing, because we have a ton of it, our team created a report for anyone who's interested. You can visit hirology.com/guides if anyone has any specific questions on the material I reviewed. Please feel free to reach out to info@hirology, and we will get you set up with a one-on-one consultation. I want to thank everyone for their time today. And I know we have plenty of time here, so I'm going to go ahead and open the floor for any questions you might have.
Yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat or the Q&A. We did get a couple in our Q&A, so I'll go ahead and ask you those now, Alex. But yeah, if anyone has any others, feel free to add them in there. But the first one, what are job seekers' top pay? Or, I'm sorry, what are job seekers' top needs outside of pay?
Yeah, it's a great question. I went through a few slides and nailed a few of these. So the easy kind of apples to pick, right? The lowest hanging fruit would be schedule flexibility, career growth, education or tuition reimbursement, and workplace culture. Those are really like the big ones. But I think the biggest thing here is that we want to make sure that you can be creative, because the more that you can be creative with the benefits that you're offering, whatever matters to your facility or your community, we just want to make sure that it also blends in and works with the budget you currently have. But that could be also things like training and mentorship programs. I've heard some facilities use uniform or commuting or cell phone reimbursements. Again, I think the biggest thing to think about here is just be creative with what makes the most sense for your facility and your community, your culture, and within your budget.
Perfect. Another question here. What are some ways to show rather than tell job seekers that you have a great culture?
Yeah, this is a great question. I think the biggest thing that I want to lean into here is really honestly storytelling. If I was going to kind of bundle into one, right? So first of all, I want to bring this back to the career sites that I was mentioning earlier. People are doing their research on their own for their careers, like you'd be doing if you were going to put, if you were essentially doing your research to put a loved one into a home, right? So you want to make sure that the careers page is bright, inviting, showcasing all that you have to offer. I want you to include testimonials, right, from your employers or maybe even the residents to show why your community is a great place to work and live. You can include videos, you can include pictures. You really just want to humanize this experience for the applicant because 9 times out of 10, what we're seeing is that applicant right now is looking at the job, they're seeing the post on whatever careers or whatever job board that they're on, but then they're going to your career site and they're doing their due diligence in terms of their research. You just want to make sure that that information is front and center and it's crystal clear anywhere that applicant might be seeing your company or your brand.
Great. I think we've got one more question unless others come through. But last one here. Best advice for identifying the best of the best in your pipeline.
Okay. Yeah, that's a great question. So, and there's a few sources that I want to kind of highlight with this question. And I'm gonna go ahead and bring this back to some of the features that we offer at Hierology. But this is things like pre-screen surveys. Um, what we have at Hierology within our platform are little surveys or essentially knockout questions, right? So these are things like, are you willing to take a drug test? And if a candidate gets this information, essentially, it's 1 to 7 questions, right? But if a candidate answers specific questions incorrectly, aka in this example, they're not willing to take a drug test at your facility, your community, we'll automatically fail them on that survey, which is going to free up your time interviewing this applicant, right? So all the information will still be in there. If for some reason you would like to go ahead and interview them, you can, but we'll go ahead and show that that candidate is not willing or not able to perform one of the qualifications that you have been required. So you can free up that time reviewing that candidate and interviewing that candidate. We'll also include questions for them to fill out that they weren't necessarily in the initial application because we want to get that streamlined. At Hierology, we really want to just require first name, last name, email, get the application in the door. And if you have other questions that are part of your specific model for that role, right, we can add those later. But this is where you can get a little bit more granular with certifications, weekend shifts, things like that. One of the other things I wanted to highlight is that we also have a starring system, which allows you to rate an applicant from 1 to 5 and then segment the list of applicants so that you're reviewing and interviewing those 4s and 5s first based on those pre-screen questions that I was mentioning earlier. Then you can pair this with the resume and interview, whether they were a referral or not, which prioritizes those quality of applicants. So really, if you're looking at this from a total applicant standpoint, I think that first and foremost, career sites and in the internal referrals, those are going to be your top tier candidates, right? They've already bought into your culture, they've read your testimonials, they're interested in working at your facility or your community. And then from there, you can kind of figure out what makes the most sense. Obviously, the job boards, in our opinion, are going to be falling under those referrals and the career sites. Bit long-winded, but I hope I answered that one there.
Great. Well, I'm not seeing any other questions come through. So again, if anyone has any other questions and want to reach out to us via our email, again, that email is info@hierology.com. Thank you, Alex. Thank you, everyone else, for joining us today. We hope you found the session valuable. As a reminder, the recording and presentation will be shared out within the next 24 hours straight to your inbox. So thank you, everyone, and we hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone.